course, the day after the most amazing election, Donald Trump has made history, shocking the political experts and stunning the Washington establishment by winning the race to become the 45th president of the United States of America.
And President Trump will have Republican majorities to work with on Capitol Hill as the GOP kept control of the Senate. Gary Lane begins our CBN News coverage with this look at Trump's amazing victory in the battle for the White House.
As the returns came in Tuesday evening, some of the battleground states were just too close to call. But when Pennsylvania finally went for Trump, it was over. The Republican had secured more than the 270 electoral votes needed to become the 45th president of the United States.
Now it's time for America to bind the wounds of division. Have to get together. To all Republicans and Democrats and independents across this nation, I say it is time for us to come together as one united people.
Overnight, Hillary Clinton conceded the election in a private phone call to Trump. Clinton and the Democrats outspent Trump by nearly 2-1. Yet he still won, taking both the electoral and popular votes, and in the process, turning the American political map into a sea of Republican red. The final vote counts have yet to come in from all the states. But by early Wednesday morning, Trump had taken more than the 270 electoral votes needed to win the White House. And as CBN's Abigail Robertson tells us from New York, that led to a victory celebration at the Trump headquarters.
A tense first hour quickly turned to nervous excitement as Trump supporters began to realize he might just win. People stuck it out to the wee hours of the morning to witness the final results of this historic election.
It is my high honor and distinct privilege to introduce to you the President-elect of the United States of America, Donald Trump.
Even those who were on the Trump train from the very beginning were surprised by the victory.
I'm kind of in shock. I thought we were really going to get to the last tonight.
I'm just pumped. He's going to make America safe again, proud again, and he will and can make America great again.
I was praying in bed last night, and I'm so happy.
The campaign is crediting evangelical support for playing a key role in his win.
We had some outside evangelical groups report to us that they knocked on millions of doors. I think they got really excited, and it took Donald Trump, it took this formerly pro-choice billionaire man from Manhattan to really give the most impassioned defense of life that I've ever heard from a Republican presidential candidate. It was quite compelling in that last debate, and it really helped many of those evangelicals and Catholics come home.
A member of the Border Patrol says he hopes that this Trump presidency will mean he's able to do his job again. Jerry Falwell Jr. says he's excited to see Trump defend religious liberty, and many others are just ready to see him make America great again. Reporting from New York City, Abigail Robertson, CBN News.
Thanks, Abby. So what led to Trump's stunning victory? For one thing, it became clear that after nearly 8 years of Barack Obama, millions of Americans wanted change.
Ours was not a campaign, but rather an incredible and great movement made up of millions of hardworking men and women who love their country and want a better, brighter future for themselves and for their family.
Trump promised to bring back jobs to America, and it was his appeal to voters who used to be known as Reagan Democrats, the blue-collar workers in Rust Belt states like Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, and Michigan, that helped make the difference. Trump also received 81% of the evangelical vote. That was about 3% more than Republican Mitt Romney received in 2012. Trump's evangelical running mate, Vice President-elect Mike Pence, gave credit where credit was due.
I come to this moment deeply humbled, grateful to God for his amazing grace. And I'm mostly grateful to our President-elect, whose leadership and vision will make America great again.
Gary Lane, CBN News.
This is Heather Sells reporting. President-elect Trump will have Republican majorities to work with on Capitol Hill in both the House and the Senate. Many political experts predicted that Democrats would take over the Senate, given the number of seats that Republicans had to defend and the negatives perceived with the Trump campaign. But in the end, Republicans pulled off the victory, coming up with wins in places like Wisconsin, where incumbent GOP Senator Ron Johnson was written off for months.
It's a big night for Wisconsin. It's a big night for America.
Republicans started the night with a 54-46 majority in the Senate. Today, they're on track to end up with at least 52 seats. GOP incumbents won in tough races in Rust Belt states like Pennsylvania. They won in Missouri and North Carolina, where the entrenched incumbents faced uphill battles. And they handed President-elect Trump a huge gift, a Republican-controlled Senate that can work alongside a Republican-controlled House.
A Republican president and a Republican Senate and a Republican House can do things to change this country and focus again on opportunity.
Notably, Senator John McCain won his 6th term in the Senate. On the Democratic side, double amputee Iraq War veteran Tammy Duckworth defeated incumbent Ron Kirk in Illinois. And Nevada elected the country's first Latina senator, succeeding former Democratic leader Harry Reid. In Florida, Senator Marco Rubio came back from a failed presidential bid to win a 2nd term and offer a call for unity.
You can disagree with someone without hating them, and you can disagree with them without delegitimizing their point of view.
With Republican majorities on Capitol Hill, President Trump will have a clearer path to put his programs into action and make some key moves like nominating a new justice to fill the open seat on the Supreme Court. It's just one of the many important decisions that will have to be made in the early days of a new era in Washington. Heather Sells, CBN News.
Well, here's another interesting. As we were trying to analyze this thing before the election, we were saying, well, look, there's some of these counties, so-called bellwether counties, will they hold up? Well, it was Hillsborough County in Florida that has always predicted where Florida is going to go. Hillsborough missed it on this one. But there's a place called Ottawa County in Ohio and Vigo County in Indiana. And guess what? They will write again. They predict the nation, so you can find out where those counties go, and the rest of the nation goes with them. Another sidebar, I was talking to somebody, Donald Trump's mother was Scottish. So the Scots will rule the world whether you like it or not. Well, with me now is our team of experts to analyze this election. CBN News political editor John Wagge, CBN political correspondent David Brody, and Jay Sekulow of the American Center for Law and Justice. Let me go to David Brody. David, you've got some interesting figures, I understand. Tell us about it.
Yeah, Pat, it was a late night, so I said, why not just get out the calculator and start crunching these numbers? Look, let me give the bottom line to everybody out there. 4 million more evangelicals showing up at the polls this time around for Donald Trump compared to Mitt Romney in 2012. That sums it all up. The share of the electorate was still 26%. In other words, the evangelical portion of the electorate was 26%, but there were more Americans voting, more evangelicals voting this time around. And so when you extrapolate the numbers, it comes to about 4 million more. And if you dig even deeper, look at Florida and North Carolina. Remember, we hear this 81%, that Trump won 81% of evangelicals. But if you dig deeper, in Florida, a state he had to have, he was at 85% among evangelical voters. And in North Carolina, he was at 82%. So once again, if you don't win, if he doesn't win Florida and North Carolina, it's game, set, match, it's done. Evangelicals came through for him big time in those two states.
Well, thanks, David. We'll look at that more. But ladies and gentlemen, I have never seen in my lifetime a candidate for the presidency that gave the evangelicals their agenda as thoroughly as Donald Trump. I have never seen anything like it. And the evangelicals responded. He went to say, I want to help you. And they said, well, we want to help you too. And they're just amazing on board for this man. Well, the pollsters got it wrong, but our John Wagge didn't. John, you were on this program the day before the election, and you were talking about 270 votes and so on and on and on. And you said the Republicans would lose a couple seats in the Senate. I think you were off by 1 seat, but maybe not. They lost Kirk. So
right now it's right on, but there's still 2 Senate seats out, so we'll see.
What's that? Ayotte and who?
Yeah, Kelly Ayotte, and then the Louisiana race, Pat, has to go to a runoff because they have that open kind of primary type vote on election day. So, yeah, but he is going to be at least 52-48.
Well, what do you think
Senate.
the poll? You know, I got so sick of watching. I mean, I used to like Fox. They really turned me off. I mean, I told our guys that they've gone to the dark side. I mean, it was just amazing. Those people kept speculating, and he can't do this, and he's got a narrow path. And you were right on. Why did they miss it so bad?
Well, I think part of it is a kind of a collective mentality in the Boston to Washington D.C. corridor, and our David Brody is not in that among that camp, but and he was out on the road a lot too. But basically, it's kind of a reinforcing thing where they all reinforce each other about their opinions, and you find an internal poll somewhere that says, oh boy, this was already a close run for Trump. I don't see how he can do it. And then that feeds on itself, you know, when you're sitting in newsrooms and talking amongst each other. So.
David, you know, Obama campaigned so hard for Hillary. He thought this was going to be a repudiation of his legacy. Is that how you read it?
Yeah, I think that's a big portion of this. Look, I think in America we get we want to see change, and we get a little bit tired in the society of the same old thing. And I think we saw some of that. You know, Hillary Clinton won the African American vote 88% to 8%, which is obviously a very strong number. But 93%, that's what Obama did in 2012 over Mitt Romney's 6%. So. Essence, Hillary Clinton down 5% on the African-American vote, and Donald Trump up 2% from what Mitt Romney did. Once again, Mitt Romney did 6% of the African-American vote. Donald Trump did 8% of the African-American vote. Very telling. Also, a look while we're on minority populations, the Hispanic community here, 27% went for Romney in 2012. Donald Trump beat that number, 29%. With Hispanics. He said all along he was going to do better than people thought with Hispanics, and indeed he did.
Jay Sekulow was with us today, and Jay, you remember Clinton, as I'm correct, fired all the U.S. attorneys, and they talked about Bush doing it. What a terrible bloodletting it would be. How should Trump handle the Justice Department? They've been so off course on this whole thing.
He should do three things. First, accept the resignation of all sitting U.S. attorneys, which, by the way, is tradition and practice. That's pretty much the way it is. They serve at the pleasure, they're through a nomination process, but it's at the pleasure of the president. That's number one. Number two, immediately when he is sworn in, dismiss the Attorney General of the United States, appoint an interim AG until his cabinet member position is filled, and make sure that interim Attorney General is someone that understands exactly what needs to be cleaned up within the FBI and the United States Department of Justice. Number three, it's going to be critical to fill the role of the Office of Legal Counsel within the Department of Justice, because we don't have a hypothetical vacancy for the Supreme Court. There is a vacancy on the Supreme Court. He will put a nominee through, I'm sure, very quickly, and there's going to be a battle. The Republicans was successful in maintaining control of the Senate, but, Pat, as you know, they don't have 60. We talked last night about that nuclear option issue. It may come to that, but the fact of the matter is, a very concrete first 100-day agenda here is critical with regard just to the Justice Department and the courts.
Well, the Republicans who have control, they cannot allow a little rump of the Senate to maintain that filibuster and block all their nominees. You remember what they did with those wonderful circuit court judges where they killed them, you know?
Yeah, or tried to. We eventually got them through, but it took years to get them through, and some did not make it, as you said. So the Republicans need to have a good institutional memory of what's happened in the past. Remember, Harry Reid detonated the nuclear option. That is still in play. The Republicans don't have to do anything. They can just play out of the same playbook. But look, we don't have, again, Pat, we don't have the hypothetical vacancy at the Supreme Court of the United States. There is a vacancy. So this first 100 days, once you get through the next 71 days of the Obama administration, which could be the most dangerous in that administration, by the way, right now, starting today, because by executive order and fiat, he'll do everything he can. I think that the next 100 days then for Donald Trump are going to clearly focus in large part Obamacare, obviously, but also on the judiciary.
Comey has a 10-year appointment. What do you do with him?
Yep. Ask him to resign. How about that, Pat? Ask him to resign. Congress comes in immediately and does an oversight hearing and maybe an impeachment hearing. What James Comey did was incorrect to the American people and unlawful in my view. He implicated the Department of Justice and the FBI 3 times in the election for President of the United States. And whether you're a Republican, a Democrat, or independent, it doesn't matter. That is not the role of the Justice Department. 3 times he engaged the American electorate during a presidential election. That is outrageous. It should not be tolerated. He should go, period.
Well, David, what do you think of Trump's relations with Congress? They have to have a Congress, but it looks like at this point, Trump doesn't owe anybody anything. I mean, he won this thing on his own, so to speak. Does he, he's got to have the Congress with him, though. What do you think?
Well, Pat, he has a mandate. I don't think there's any question about it. He has won blue states that are now red. And anytime you do that, and the last time I checked, Ronald Reagan did that. And here we are with Donald Trump. So he's going in with a strong hand, and he's a deal maker. He's a negotiator, and he knows the art of the deal, and he'll do actually probably pretty well when it comes to that. Look, he is not a Republican in the true sense of the word. He's not a Democrat. I like to call him a Trumpublican because that really is what he is. He's a kind of a combination of everything. Look, he talked about infrastructure spending last night. That's going to be some dollars coming in or going out, I should say. He believes that his tax plan will have that growth that comes with it, and so it'll offset that. But look, you're looking at in the first 100 days, you're looking at infrastructure. He will try to start to build that wall. I don't think there's any question about that. And then you just go down the list. Obviously, Supreme Court's going to be a big deal. And then the Johnson Amendment, which, of course, as you know, Pat, he's been talking about for a while. And so I think you'll see that in the first 100 days. Let me just say one quick story. Mike Pence, Jenna Browder and I were in, trying to remember what state, North Carolina, Greenville, North Carolina. It was just this past Friday. Jenna's interviewing him on the bus, and there I am on the bus as well. And as I'm getting off the bus, Mike Pence says, "Hey, David," and I look back, he goes, "We're going to win this thing." And he said it with such confidence. It wasn't like, "I think we're going to win this thing. I'm feeling good." It wasn't that. He said, "We're going to win this thing." And that's a direct quote because he got a sense in that Rust Belt area, which is exactly what they did on election night. He kind of had a sense of that. And we saw it come to fruition on Tuesday night.
Trump has said that he's going to call a special session of Congress to repeal Obamacare. How do you see that playing out?
Well, I think that'll be a part of what goes on. Look, that's a heavy lift still. I mean, he's going to have to build a mandate, a majority, if you will. It's a razor-thin majority in the Senate, so that'll be an issue. I also think, get ready for term limits, a constitutional amendment for term limits. And I know a lot of people say, "Oh, my goodness, here we go, constitutional amendments. Those are hard to pass." But if you look at independents in this country, 74% of independents want term limits in this country, and Donald Trump did very well with independents. I think there is something to be said and some momentum on that front, because that's what, in essence, Donald Trump ran on, that he's an outsider and he wants to kind of drain the swamp, and, people's power base is threatened. Here comes Donald Trump, and boy, he's a hurricane for sure.
Jay, who's going to do this? Is it going to be Giuliani? Is he going to be the man, or is he going to be the former governor of New Jersey? Or you work with Jeff Sessions, Senator Sessions.
Yeah.
Who's going to?
I think I was just about to say that, Pat. I think I'm looking forward to talking to Senator Sessions this afternoon. I think Senator Sessions is going to have. Frankly, I think Senator Sessions has any role he wants. He could be Secretary of Defense. He could be the Attorney General of the United States. There's a lot of roles for him. I envision something like this. I think Jeff Sessions, clearly, as you said, is going to get a major role, maybe at the Justice Department. He would be, by the way, as a senior ranking member of the United States Senate, former Attorney General from Alabama, a well-experienced lawyer. He's the kind of guy that could fix the Justice Department. I think that's one of the top jobs here. I think you're going to be looking at Rudy Giuliani, our friend from New York, probably ends up with something like Homeland Security. I mean, that's a big portfolio right now. Ben Carson could end up with, who knows, the Department of Education, HHS. He may be the one tasked with the whole repeal of Obamacare. So I think you've got a whole series of scenarios here with people being, look, it's going to unfold. But you said something, Pat, and David just said, I want to underscore it. This is not a walk in the park for the president-elect. Okay, he doesn't have 60 votes. So the filibuster potentials on judicial appointments, yeah, maybe we can get that to continue to not be in play, but it's not going to be that way on legislation. So we're going to have the American people that want an agenda and obviously overwhelmingly want change. are going to have to realize that there's going to be fights here, significant fights, including at the Supreme Court, but also on legislation, the repeal of Obamacare. That'll be significant. He's also the Johnson Amendment. I mean, this is for the first nominee that's ever talked about the Johnson Amendment. So, which is, of course, that muzzles churches. So we're establishing right now at the ACLJ a 100-day agenda that we're going to submit to the president-elect and to Congress to say this is what we think is realistic within this 100-day period and work there. And then watch any executive orders between now and the end of the year, and also watch an attempt by the Obama administration at the United Nations to call for the pre-67 borders for Israel. I expect that will go to the Security Council, and it may well be that the U.S. will not veto it. In fact, I pretty much know they will not veto it. So we've got a real fight on that front, too.
Thank you, Jay. John, what do you think? We're talking about Israel. The idea of them having a two-state solution imposed by the United Nations is anathema to Israel.
It is, Pat. This could create a pretty convulsive situation in the world at large. Israel is probably breathing a sigh of relief right now that you know, the pressure, all that pressure of 8 years of the Obama administration is off, and frankly, some pressure from the Bush administration through the State Department. It'll be interesting to see if the Trump administration launches reform of the State Department. One thing that they proposed on Israel, his top advisor, who may become the U.S. ambassador to Israel, is David Friedman. He, just last week, proposed moving the U.S. embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem and also recognizing Jerusalem as Israel's capital. Those are just two of the things he's recommended.
Well, you know, Congress voted that, and the State Department
in 1995 they voted that.
It's been hanging that long. We have the land, we have everything ready to move, and they said, no, the capital of Israel is Tel Aviv. That is insane.
But that's State Department entrenched policy, Republican and Democrat. The bureaucrats, they persist in keeping that going, and they'll continue to do it. And so he's going to have a battle on his hands for that. Not to mention the upset that could be caused within the Middle East over that issue. I mean, you're talking some serious inflammatory kind of moves there. But it's many people believe, especially Christians, believe it's the right move.
Well, it has to be. Well, folks, you just see what's facing this man. That's why we need to do a lot of praying for the president and stand by to help him. But he's got to clean out the Justice Department, and all the U.S. attorneys across the nation will offer resignations, and he's going to have to fill those vacancies. The State Department has been giving people, ever since John F. Kennedy, the State Department has been blocking the initiatives of the executive office, and it's time that the State Department got cleaned out. I mean, he's going to have to fire some people or put them on leave or however he does it, but they're entrenched forever. And there's been an animus against Israel in certain quarters of the State Department, and that's got to be fixed. So the president's got his hands full, so if there was ever a time to pray, you've prayed, and God has given this man. He's like a modern-day Cyrus. You remember the old king who helped, king of Persia, who helped rebuild Jerusalem? Well, I think Trump is a modern-day Cyrus. He's placed in by the hand of the Lord, and people recognize this, and they're thrilled. But now he's got to govern, and he's got to deal with Congress, he's got to deal with the American people, he's got to deal with the courts, he's got to deal with all these people, and it's going to take extraordinary wisdom. So pray for the leaders and pray for our president.